video interviewing. Essentially, we don't have much choice about it these days. If you're looking for a job or if you just have a team meeting, you've got to be able to present yourself. If you're going on webcam and you're always hiding yourself, you end up lacking a lot of emotion. People can't really see your facial expressions, and unfortunately it can put you at a bit of a disadvantage. Now, the goals today, if successful, is how to develop a video application. You might not always have to do it live. Sometimes you can just pre-record and then send it. Another thing is just to be a bit more confident, how to prepare. And sometimes it could be like just a camera setup, but also like mentally and physically, feeling confident, and also some tips and tricks. What companies would accept a video interview? Now, kind of what I mean by this, it can be live, but it also could be pre-recorded. Up until recently, it was just a handful of companies. Now it's all of them. But people who have been doing it for many years, what has been Google, Audi, Kantar, Channel 4, Virgin Trains, we've lost them now, but these are just some of the companies that have been doing it for a while. And there's many kind of advantages and disadvantages to having this kind of setup. The biggest one is you do not get coronavirus, but the second one is you can do it from all over the world. So you can get your personality across. Perfect if you're dyslexic and you struggle getting yourself across in a written kind of manner, or English isn't your first language. You can record and watch yourself back. And that's normally really good for improvements, because employers are notoriously terrible at ever giving detailed feedback. So if you've recorded it, you can always show it to a peer, a friend, or mentor, and think, all right, this is where I'm going wrong. And if you're anything like me, you're a little bit stubborn. So if someone tells you some improvements, you're like, yeah, whatever. But if you see it yourself, it starts to really hit home. It also shows you're a bit tech savvy. In this new age, you kind of have to have a good understanding of technology. So it shows that you're at least competent in being able to get it up, get it working. So, but there are some cons. It's not all brilliant. So first thing is interruptions. And what I mean that is internet. I don't know about you guys, but my internet is so intermittent. It will like come and go, and it can unfortunately ruin a perfectly good interview. So how do we get around that? Also, some people just do not present well on camera. They might be an exceptional public speaker, but for some reason, they just come across completely flat. Because I think the pros and cons are definitely growing the more that we're getting used to having this being normal. I really hate the phrase, the new normal, by the way, so I'm trying my best to avoid it, but I guess it is. All right, so first steps. Oh yes, Alexandra, you're on. There we are, showing some confidence now. That's what we like to see. So confidence while on video. It's tough, but you've got to be able to come across your authentic self, even if you don't have the luxury of being face to face. Now, on camera, let's face it, it kind of makes everyone a bit more duller, because let's say you're more 2D, it's less like three-dimensional. So if you're like enthusiastic, you've kind of got to raise it a little bit to make it really stick out. I'm not saying you've got to be like, woohoo, but you've got to add a little bit more energy than you would otherwise. So the first tip, and I cover this a lot in my public speaking sessions, so if you guys have ever done them, there's a lot of overlap here, but some of these are really essential skills. So the first one is body language. And this is like how you sit up, you position yourself. And they're always changing the statistic, aren't they? But basically, we read more from someone's body language than we do about verbal communication. So if you're kind of like, whatever, mate, you could be talking about rocket science, but if you haven't got a good like posture or kind of like setup, people will be reading you. It's a sad world where we judge everyone by the way we look, the way we sound, but it is the truth. So what can we do? Now, if you guys are familiar with TED Talks, I love them myself. I used to watch them every night before bed to help me get a little bit more Better at speaking, though that didn't really come across well then. Because again, for me, my accent sounds okay now, but it's like when I was growing up, like it was like proper common, and there's nothing wrong with being that. But again, people do judge you, so I try to at least being able to like learn to articulate, learn some new vocabularies. But someone I want to draw your attention to is a lady called Amy Cuddy, and you may have already seen it. It's a really famous TED talk where she talks about how just by like doing a bit of a power pose can make you feel more confident. So before I go to an interview, even if it's by a camera, I'll go and stand up in the mirror, you know, hype myself up, you know, get the blood flowing, and it does help. So what she does is something called like, well, the Superwoman or Superman pose, where just by kind of doing that, it makes you feel like more authoritative, you know, more kind of like gravitas. It seems kind of a bit odd, but it does work. And let's face it, you know, you want all the help you can get. What I want to ask you guys, and you know, we'll see how offensive you guys are towards these politicians, but what do you think their body language says about them? And if you have any comments, just put them in the comments there. So we're just talking first impressions. Let's pretend you know nothing about them. Just by looking at how they position themselves, how do you think they come across?
Uncomfortable.
Okay, yeah, here we are. Yeah, they look a bit uncomfortable. Abdul has said, Putin is leaning in to listen to what is being said. Yeah, but there is even a bit more context than just that. April has said, Putin is on the left looking nervous while Trump is a bit aggressive. And Amechi, or sorry if I mispronounced your name, but nice to have you. A bit uncomfortable with the way they hold themselves. And I think, like I said, these people are arguably the most powerful people on the planet, but even their kind of body language is really not very professional. So Putin is kind of leaning forward a little bit, which again gives this impression of aggression and offness. His hands are being held like this, which creates a closed loop, which just shows that he's not open to collaboration, negotiation. His legs are open, which is a very male thing to do, which basically says, you know, I'm the bigger man here, showing dominance. So all of these things we can get just from body language. And we know these people, so we well kind of know them, so we know it's quite accurate. But really, people are judging you like this exactly the way. And within the first few seconds of you even opening your mouth, they may have an understanding. Trump, on the other hand, is looking a little bit schoolboyish. You know, his legs are kind of pointed inwards. He's doing a triangle, which is a very politician-y shape. Apparently, the psychology behind it is that the strongest shape in the universe is a triangle. So by doing that, you're showing kind of strength. But just like Putin, it is kind of a bit closed off. Alexandra has just said both miserable, uncomfortable selves, both also trying to show dominance, Putin hesitantly leaning in, Trump holding himself up to show dominance. Exactly. And I don't want you guys to get paranoid now, but when you're going into interviews, do try and kind of like keep engaged with how you are holding yourself up. A thing that might benefit is that keeping things eye level, that I find really helpful. So for instance, Alexandra, if you don't mind me picking on you, you've got the camera like up there, right? So from our point of view, we're looking down on you, which can give the, you know, nice, which could give the impression of insignificance, you know, less than. Or if you have the camera too high up, you're looking down on someone, or the other way, you can look too dominant and too kind of overpowering. Yeah, perfect, much better.
It's actually angled up so that I'm actually above the camera because it's my phone and I can't really angle it completely
Yeah.
straight. So it has to be facing up a bit. So it has to be under me a bit. But now it's a bit sort of straighter. So when it's interesting that you thought that you were under me, sorry, that you were over me when in fact
Under,
you were. camera was below me.
Interesting.
So that, thank you. It's a bit more normal now, I think.
I know, like, honestly, these things might seem like, well, is he really picking up that tiny detail? But when the job market is so difficult to get a job anyway, anything which could make someone look at you in a slightly negative way is probably worth taking into consideration. So that's all I would say about that matter. All right, next thing is credibility. And credibility is essentially someone believing you before you've even had a chance to prove yourself. So you know when sometimes someone walks in the room and you know nothing about them, but already you know this is someone you want to listen to. That is something which I think comes with confidence, comes with experience, but also can come with just how you compose yourself and how you dress. Today, I'm not looking particularly sharp, but if I have an interview, even if it's online, I always make sure I'm wearing a shirt or a suit. It can look a bit cringy, but I think it still shows that regardless of the situation or the scenario, you're still putting the exact same amount of effort into how you present yourself. This also comes not just visually though, but also verbally. And as Brits, I always find, we're quite reserved in a lot of cases. So we might not big ourselves up. Well, when I work with Americans, they're like, I'm amazing. You know, they go right into the compliments. And I think we need to do that a bit more as well. So at the beginning of this thing, I would say, hi guys, I'm Nat. I'm the head of, I've done that. I've met that person. I've achieved this. So right away, you know that this isn't a guy who just looks 12 talking to me. It's a guy who actually knows what he's talking about. So credibility is really essential. Okay, so far so good. Now the next one.
Can I just say, like, I just want to sort of make an observation, which is the thing about raising confidence or energy is it works, but it kind of doesn't work very well if you're in like the wrong nervous system state. Like my experience of having sort of PTSD was I then found myself unable to get confident at all. And it was more like I had to be sort of very hesitant and be like, well, maybe I hope that maybe one day I will be able to be kind of competent and have self-belief and be able to do things for myself again. And I think that's an issue that a lot of people on the autism spectrum have, because they're essentially dealing with that nervous system state and dealing with the kind of being sort of stuck on the negativity. It's really also from complex trauma, which seems to be the norm in autism rather than the opposite. So I would say, like, work on the nervous system. You look at polyvagal theory, and sort of work on overcoming trauma, and it'll be gradual, but also then you use the confidence building things as well, and just understand that it's going to be a gradual thing, but eventually maybe you will actually get there to a stage where it's like, oh look, I can look at people and actually see people rather than sort of blacking out when I'm with other people, and I can actually trust my instincts. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
Oh no, honestly, I appreciate you getting in there. Like, that's a really valid point. It's that none of these things are 100% solutions, okay? So it's very easy to say just get confident, but actually pulling it off is a whole nother matter. And as someone who also, you know, has mild autism and like OCD tendencies, when you go down that negative spiral, you, like, ideally you'd say, oh, today I'm feeling great, let's do the interview. But it doesn't work like that. If the interview is today and today is not a good day for you, you've got to be able to find a way of overcoming that. So in many ways, it's like kind of like acting. So after this interview, you know, I might just cry in a corner, but right now I need to show that I'm competent, able, and this is why, you know, doing some power position, sitting upright, dressing smart, it might not actually solve the root problem, but what it can do is at least give you the like view that you've got your stuff together. And I think with autism and stuff, it will take a lot more to get over those initial challenges.
I think there's another thing which may be helpful to some people, which is the idea that you're not necessarily having to sort of fake it and mask. I mean, you could be doing that. You can do what Amy Cuddy says and fake it till you make it, and fake it till you become it. But also, actually, every person has several sort of ego states or sub-personalities, and you can actually get into different states, and you can actually switch your nervous system state once you sort of learn how to do it. So you're not actually, it's not like one of the versions of you is fake. There are actually multiple versions of you, and you can basically learn to keep bringing the sort of competent, confident version of you forward. And that's not faking, it's real.
No, that's a really interesting way of putting it. And to be honest, I do agree with you. Like, when I switch it on, I'm not faking right now my enthusiasm, but I have definitely drawn it from a different part of me that wasn't there this morning when I woke up. But just to carry on, there's another kind of good like TED talk or presenter is Julian Treasure. And he talks about, it's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. So people get bored very easily, okay? And they do not, I can't remember who says this, but people do not remember what you say, they remember how you've made them feel. And if you could be talking about really engaging things, but if it's very boring and, you know, doesn't stimulate their brain cells, just like yours doesn't get stimulated, they switch off. And this is why when I speak, I try to use tonal variations. So this is obviously exaggerated, but hello, how are you today? You know, and by using highs and lows and having different, like quieter and louder, it keeps the other person who's listening to you kind of engaged and switched on. I quite often listen to people who are quite monotone, you know, like, hello, so yes, I am applying for this position. And yes, they might be the best person for the job. They might have a cracking CV, but if the interviewer leaves that session and they think, you know what, there was just no magic. What we normally mean by that spark or by that magic is the feeling that is left behind. So if you are working with someone or yourself, I would just try and work on their delivery and how you could show excitement for that position. You know, feelings are very contagious. If you're excited, they become excited. If you're confident in your abilities, they're confident. People often kind of like mirror and take their opinions of other people. So these top tips, and since, you know, from what Alexandra said, this is actually good, so I might want to adjust this, but it's don't fake it till you make it. Because that's not very authentic. She says, fake it till you become it, which essentially is, you might not always feel confident. You might not always feel like you're 100% ready for a position. But if you keep doing it, one day it will not be faking it anymore. It will actually be part of you. Now, whether it is finding that part of you which is already there, or developing a part which you feel currently isn't there, it can be done. The next thing is, you might think, oh, great, all these new things I've now got to take on board, but you really do not have to reinvent the wheel. Tiny tweaks can equal big changes. So that's tiny tweaks equal big changes. For me, it's just about maybe having like better lighting, you know, having a few lights on me that can show my face, and suddenly the more emotive part of me comes across. Or it could be, you know, I always a bit cringy, but I love it. I'll listen to Taylor Swift before any interview, you know, like shake it off. And I'll do a bit of jump, get the blood pumping, and that gives me more energy. So, or I've got a pull-up bar in my kitchen, right? So if I'm about to do a talk like today, I'll do like 10 of those, and it will just get the blood pumping and do a bit of exercise, and it really makes the world a difference. So small, doesn't make a big difference, but it works. Or it could be just ironing my clothes. Yes, you guys may not see the fact that if I was wearing a shirt, you may not see that I'm wearing a shirt, but just the subtle added confidence it may give you to know that. And the last one is power poses for a few minutes before you speak. There's no wrong in hyping yourself up. I think psychology said, like, rather than saying, you know, I can do this, it's actually better, apparently, to say, you can do this, you've got this. So it's like you are talking to yourself in you know, just changing the words. And whether or not that works, apparently they've got science to back that. But it's something that I've started to do now. And I think because it's very difficult to motivate yourself, but a lot of people find it easier to support other people. So you could treat yourself like the other person, and maybe you are able to take that advice on. Possibly that's the reason. All right, so guys, we are doing really well for time. These are the first things I wanted to let you know for how to be a bit more confident in terms of how you present yourself and how you come across. Now, I'm going to teach you something which is often neglected, the tech side. Because again, you could be the best person at interviews, but if your technology fails you or it just doesn't look great, it's going to let you down. So here are a few top tips on how you can either do a video application, an interview, anything along those lines. First of all, landscape. Now, many people will not have a webcam on their computer, so they will use their mobile phones. Absolutely fine, because the cameras on these are really good. They're normally like 1080, which is like, you could blow up really big and it still look good. But filming it in kind of like your Instagram stories way looks incredibly unprofessional. It doesn't show all the expressions, and it's just kind of not the kind of like norm. So if possible, always film landscape. Again, simple thing can make a big difference. If you do not film that way, your picture ends up looking kind of like that. It's fine, but it's not the best. Oh no, Abdel has run away. Continue. The next part is focus. Now, what we mean by focus isn't just paying attention. It's about how the camera, like, if something is sharp or blurry. And with a lot of like phones, they're automatic, okay? So quite often you think you don't have to do anything because your camera is automatically focusing. But with some phones, they get confused. So if there was anything in my background, like maybe a picture or portrait, it could accidentally focus on that. And you know, when it goes like blurry, sharp, that can be quite distracting. And if possible, that's something you want to avoid. So a quick tip, and again, this might not work on webcams that are built into your computer, but will work on your phone. So all you need to do is you kind of like hold your face or the person's face, and it will say AE/AF lock on an iPhone, or it will just be like a circle or a square on an Android. And all you're doing there is you're telling the inbuilt computer to, hey, this is what I want you to focus on. And I always do that to my face before doing a session, just to give the automatic feature a little bit of a helping hand. Because as always, we are very distractive creatures. And if your camera is busy adjusting in the background, the person judging you or interviewing you is suddenly no longer focusing on what you're saying. And again, very, very tiny thing, but if you add all these tiny things together, you might come across a lot better when they end up doing a little point system. Okay, next, lighting. Lighting is something which I think so many people just take for granted. I'll put my computer here, I'll just kind of talk wherever. But why I think lighting makes such a world of difference is that what is the main benefit of being on video, apart from not getting corona? It is showing your expressions, your facial features. So if you're in like a dark, dingy place, you're kind of losing all that kind of like detail. It also can make you look a bit like a horror movie if you have like light coming from one side. And with symbolism, people are more heavily influenced by external factors such as kind of like light, sound. So if there's a bit of an echo, it can make someone kind of think you're a bit untrustworthy. It really can get quite meta. So what I always say, best time of the day to film is midday because the sun is at its, no, the worst time is midday because that's when the sun is like beaming down on your face. But realistically, you're probably always going to be inside. And that's when I try to use different lighting. Now, you know, you've got like yellow lights and white lights. The white lights are typically better, but either way, what I would suggest is having the same types of lights. And I do something called 3-point lighting. This is when you have a light above you and a light to the left and a light to the right. And by having that, it gets rid of all the shadows. I've got a white background here because my background is all messy and not very professional. And this also reflects the light as well to keep me nice and bright. Now, if you see this image here, do you guys have any ideas about why it's not a very good image? Like, do you know why it didn't turn out amazing? Any suggestions?
You're distracted by the building behind him.
Yes, the building. Any other reasons? But that is true.
His suit is dark. His face is light.
Yeah, no, all correct. And Amici said the light is in of the window, and that's right. So if you guys know much about how cameras work, you've got your lens, right? And the light goes in the lens and you've got the sensor where it's kind of reading the data. And the camera is always trying to figure out the brightest source able to like make the image. So if you are standing in front of a window or a light source, the background is going to be brighter than you are, and thus you are going to become a silhouette. So what you always want to do is have your face facing the light source. So at the moment, my garden is in front of me and the light's hitting my face, I look good. But if I was the other way around, I would lose all my details. So if possible, always move the furniture around, the chairs, into a position where the light is coming toward your face, not on the side, not behind. It really can make a difference. And it makes a difference because people can see your face and they can see if you're genuine. It's like if someone walks around with like a balaclava, you don't really trust them because they're hiding something. It's the exact same thing on webcam. All right, so next, finding the light. These are examples of some good lighting. And all these tips and suggestions really do not have to break the bank. So you can get a couple of lights. These people are using something called ring lights. And they're just kind of like circles that have like, well, lights around them. It's really quite, well, I mean, you can get good ones on Amazon for not very much. But if you are doing a lot of sessions, it might be a good investment. Okay, you guys all doing good still?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, well, I'll continue on before I lose my voice. Okay, good point. How much is not very much? Well, you can get, for £5, you can get a cheap light on Amazon, okay? Or $5, you know, it's similar to that. It doesn't have to be a great quality. All it has to be though is consistent. So that you do, if your lights in your house are like one color and the light you've got coming on your side is another, that's when it's not going to look very good. Ideally white light rather than like the yellow light. But obviously you can spend loads if you want to. Sometimes though, just if you have just white paper or a white background, the reflection enough is good. But guys, one light. I mean, like I said, if you go on Amazon, you can find them all different costs. You get what you pay for. But with all these things, I'm not telling you to go out and buy anything. I really think you can do it with strategically finding the right locations. Though if you're some reason working in a basement, you are going to want to probably invest in some decent lights. The most important technical rule though, apart from good internet, I would say is good sound. We can honestly get away with having bad picture quality. People are okay with that, as long as they can kind of see your lips moving and they know you're a real person, happy days. But if the sound quality is bad, that's when the issue comes, because it's distracting, it's misleading, you can't hear someone. People are always having sound issues where they're like, no one can hear you, or it's so loud and it's kind of like deafening. So there's a couple of tips you can do, and none of these are going to break the bank. First of all, super simple, barely an inconvenience, make sure you're in a quiet space. It's easier said than done depending on your background and situations, but asking people, do you mind just for half an hour, can you give me some space? Even tiny whispering can be picked up, because the way our ears work and the way that microphones work are completely different. Our ears, right, are multiple directions. So like sound comes in our ear, and if it's irrelevant, you know, not useful, our ears just aren't bother listening. So hums, buzzes, you know, like our ears will tune it out. But microphones will honestly, they will pick up everything. So to you, might sound fine, but to the microphone, it will pick it up. That's why if you ever go outside and you hear the wind, you know, like, it sounds horrible on camera, but it never sounds horrible to you. So first of all, find a quiet location. Shut doors, shut windows, make sure the wind isn't blowing inside as much as you can. Turn fans off when it's been really hot lately. Even if, you know, no one wants to turn their fan off when it's hot, but just do it for a short time. Another thing you can do is, do you have anything causing buzzing? Maybe again, it's a fan, a heater, ventilation, could be a refrigerator if you're doing your interview or your fridges. I would turn it off just for your interview, always turn it back on, because they can be a bit distracting. And your main goal on getting a successful video interview is making sure the person is engaged, they believe your credibility, and also they are not distracted. The next thing is projecting your voice. There is a big difference between shouting, so, hi, I would like to talk about this job, that kind of hurts the ears, and just projecting. When I'm normally talking, like, hi guys, I'm Nat, this is how I speak. I wouldn't normally speak with this much kind of like volume, I speak from like the gut. It just means you're far more easier to hear. And you might have noticed there's been parts of this webinar where I've repeated myself twice, because if there's a point I really want to hit home, I want you to walk away remembering that point. I will repeat myself just to make sure that the message got across loud and clear. So that's it, quiet environment. And you can do that by doing a bit of a sound test. So what I sometimes do is I'll get my phone out, I'll record my environment for just about 30 seconds, then I'll listen back to it, and I can listen to, like, is there any things that I normally do not notice, but actually are quite apparent on video. Some people might live under a flight pass, or might have a railway nearby, and they're so used to it, it doesn't bother them, but actually it's quite apparent. Or another good one is cats. I love cats, but meow, meow. They're, you get used to their meowing, but to an interviewer, you hear a cat, you've lost your attention. You're now onto that fur line. So those are a couple of things. You could also have headphones. Headphones, great. A lot of them already have microphones attached, so it shouldn't cost you that much, if anything. All right, framing. We mentioned this one earlier, and we are whizzing through them, guys, but I hope you're all finding it not too fast. The framing is just how you present yourself. So what we mentioned, eye level. Eye level is by far the best option. It puts you on an equal paring. For instance, if I'm up here looking down, it doesn't make me look like that credible. If I'm up looking down on you, it can make me look a bit arrogant. So if possible, eye level. And another good thing, which Abdul, you've done good here, is having a little bit of headroom, because it kind of puts your body in perspective and it doesn't make anything look out of proportion. And if you're central, so at the moment, like say we're both central looking at the lens, it comes across like we are looking at you, one person. If you're to like the side, like you would in kind of an interview style, it's as you're talking to everyone. And then an interviewer wants to feel special. So try as much as possible to have your camera as near to the center of your computer as you can. A lot of people who have external cameras will normally have it on the side. So as they're talking, they're just not even looking at the camera. And eye contact is a big thing in forming human connections. And I say that as someone with autism, being continuously told to make eye contact, it does make a difference. So there's that. Another good tip is, and all of you are doing this today, is having it actually your camera propped up somewhere. Nothing worse than someone holding their camera, you know, their mobile phone for interviewing. Like, oh yeah, I'm doing great today. You're going to get seasick, you're going to get dizzy, it's super distracting. And people are always focusing on the background, which brings me to the next slide. Just like we mentioned that people can tell so much about you from your posture, the way you present yourself. This doesn't stop with you. This continues towards your background. Just looking in your background, people are judging. They are looking, they are trying to build a narrative, a story. So in this image, she's very fashion conscious. She's very, you know, a little bit cluttered, you know, very stylish. They are looking at you. So I always think, look in your background, is there anything where someone could build an image of you that you don't want them to get? An example is, I was at my family house for a month, you know, for a lockdown, and I was having so many professional meetings, and my mum's got unicorns everywhere. Like the whole house is unicorns. It didn't look good. So what I would do before each session is I'd literally get the little horses with horns on their heads and put them away. If possible, a good background is something like this. So this is just some white cloth I put up, and it hides all the mess, and it's something that I don't have to overly worry about. So from what I can see, Abdul, your background's fine. There's nothing which I think is giving me too much detail. Alexandra, your background, I can't see too much in it, but you know, there are some books and stuff. If it was a bit nearer, I would be trying to read what's in your background. So any posters, anything which someone is getting distracted, you've lost them. And this is why for presentations, people always say, do not use a lot of words. Because if there's words on the presentation, you're reading that rather than listening to the other person. So these final tips, just to really sink in. Landscape, hold your phone, if you're using your phone this way, looks more professional. Lighting, keep yourself lit well. Make sure the light is facing your face, not from the back of your head. Sound, find a quiet environment. Project your voice. Microphones are not good on computers. They are terrible. So you have to project your voice, even if you're this near. And you never ever want to be more than an arm's width away from your computer if you do not have an external mic. It's going to sound terrible. And as we mentioned, framing. Keep it nice and steady. About a mid shot like this is good. People like seeing facial expressions. You can get a lot from it. So if you're too far away, you're losing so much information and detail. Okay, so we've got a message. how does the align with the fashionable, sorry, I can't see it properly, one sec. Okay, so the comment is, how does the align with the fashionable approach of filming with the personal library in the background? Oh, okay, so quite often people love having a very stylish background, you know, with like lots of little ornaments and backgrounds. That's perfect for like YouTube because it makes it interesting, more engaging, more three-dimensional. But people are reading your background, and discrimination is all over the place. So I'm not saying do not do it, but think carefully. So if I'm applying for a job in the film industry, if I have like loads of DVDs in the background or a big film reel, that's quite relevant. If I have loads of footballs, yeah, it might be a good talking point, but it is distracting from the interviewer. And maybe they support a different football team. And maybe they're like, they don't really want you in the office. You would like to think people aren't that petty, but they are. So anything you can do to avoid unconscious discrimination or conscious, you should do to at least get your foot in the door, and then it will allow you to assess the situation. So I always say, if possible, use a classy background, like just a plain background. If you can't, you can't, but plain is better for this situation at least. All right, guys, we're almost there. We're on slide 23 and we've got a few more. Now, the next one is building your confidence, so finding your own style. Some of you may have the luxury of choosing how you go about your interview. You might not always, but there's a few. So the first one is talking to camera. This one you could be doing a pre-recorded interview and it's you talking to the camera. This is great for getting your personality across. However, some people absolutely despise being on camera, or for maybe other reasons can't be on camera, and that's a personal choice. But you do not want to go to someone and say, I can't do this. So what you want to do is go to them with a solution, not a problem. And this is why a slideshow is quite good. So imagine today I didn't want to be on camera, which would be a little bit ironic for this particular session, but anyway, I could just show my PowerPoint and I could talk you through it. So I'm still keeping you engaged and I'm still using like tonal variations. Other ones is animation. If you are, again, applying for a role that is very creative, you could always do a video CV or an introduction via video. It's a little bit out there and a lot of people won't do it because it's incredibly time consuming, but what it will do is make you stand out. It's another approach. And the other one is live. So again, you can pre-record a message and send it to them, or you can do it live. Some people prefer pre-recorded because it allows you more time to edit, to adjust, to review. Other people just get nervous and just want to get it over and done with. So live might be better. And there's no harm. I mean, you've got to judge this case by case, but there's no harm in asking the interviewer, could you do this? So imagine you are not available on the day of the interview. Rather than missing out on that opportunity or cancelling your holiday you've had planned for like 3 months, you could always ask if you could send them a pre-recorded video. And I find I've had pretty good responses on the whole by just asking. You can never assume, but there's no harm in asking. Next one, okay, and we are very mostly there, is if you have done a video, right, and it is uploading and they said, okay guys, we just need a link to a video. This is so important. Keep your video unlisted. If you upload it to your YouTube channel, do not have it for the world to see. And there's a few reasons for that. Because if you are applying for multiple jobs, right, and someone can see that you've done a video application for another company, that could affect them. That will have some implications in terms of your role. It's best to keep these things secret. So unlisted. Public means the world can see it. Private means only you can see it. Unlisted means only the people who have the link can see it. I would really recommend that. Because if you go on my old channel, there's videos of me applying for like working at summer camps when I was like 18. And believe it or not, I looked even younger than I do now. And what that meant is that people have a different image of you before they even got the chance. Okay, thanks. Please explain the point again, Nat. All right, thank you. So my point is if you're applying for multiple jobs, you ideally do not want the other company to know who you're applying for, as this could influence their decision. So when you have to upload a video to YouTube, if they've asked you to say, could you record a 1-minute video on why you want to work for this company? What you should do is in the settings, make sure that it's unlisted and you only send them the link. On YouTube, you can do that. If you use a platform like Vimeo, you can actually set a password. So for instance, you'd send the employer the video and say, this is the password for this video, which is another way to make sure you're completely safe, or as safe as possible. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense. Now, just to round and summarize all this section up, or I will go on LinkedIn in a sec, don't worry. Do not recite your resume or your CV. If you are going on video, there is no point just having your CV and reading it out. They already have that information. You know, this is your chance to bring something new to the table, and normally it's about personality. Next one is have a script, but do not directly read from it. Quite simply, you sound a bit robotic. So if like, okay, hi all, I'm really excited to be at this interview today. Yes, you might have the words that you want to say, but you lose all personality. A way I get around this is I'll write my script out if you feel comfortable doing so, then I'll convert it into bullet points, and then I'll have those bullet points by the side of me. And if your mind goes blank, you just look at the bullet points. It's not telling you word from word what to say, but at least it gets you back on track. And lastly, practice is everything. And I forgot to show you guys, look, there we are. I had that for the start, forgot to use it. So keep practice. Now, another question we had is, what about LinkedIn? I think if you're trying to put yourself out there, you could do a video saying, guys, I'm open for hire, but I wouldn't put your video live. The employer, when you're applying for a role, they like to believe that that job you're applying for, you really, really want, and it's special. So if you let the whole world know that you're applying for all different jobs, it makes the ones that you are applying for kind of feel a little bit less valued. That's just from my experience. That was the main part. Now it's about questions and answers. If you have any questions on confidence, on the technical side, any things that I said you didn't agree with, or any things that you'd like to add and you think would be useful, now is a good time. If you ever want to have a one-to-one with us, imagine you're neurodivergent and you've got an interview coming up and you're freaking out. You can always go on our website and request a one-to-one, and we can do some training, some coaching, just to make sure that you feel as confident as you can, because it is a nerve-wracking experience, but we are here to help. So we can either look at your CVs, we can help you with a video application, maybe a grant writing. Just another thing which is particularly relevant to neurodiversity, it can be really difficult to talk about it. Like, do you tell someone in the interview? Do you mention it? If you've got like ADHD and it's quite obvious when you're speaking, how do you address that elephant in the room? These are all subjects we can go for and talk about. And we're delivering webinars that are completely free of charge all the way up till December. So you can always get in touch. All of these videos are uploaded to YouTube, normally within 24 hours. Where can I get a cheap background? Honestly, like Amazon, you can just get a white cloth, really cheap, or a bed sheet even. There's anything like that. People will never know. Just make sure there's not like too much patterns. This one I've got was a little bit more expensive, but it's just like a projector screen. I can't remember how much it was, but because I do a lot of webinars, I found it to be quite a good investment. And as I said, what can I use to hold up it? Now, tape is going to ruin your wallpaper. So what I sometimes use is kind of string, or have it like lent up against. There's 101 things you could use, but yeah, you just don't want to damage your walls. So yeah, it looks like a whiteboard, but it's actually fabric. So if you guys see like that, and that's what I use because I've got housemates and I really don't want people, you know, seeing the backgrounds. It can be distracting, having people walk past. All right, well, it looks, any last questions? Oh, cool, Sylvia. Sorry, how can I
Yes,
help?
it's me. We sometimes forget to clean our cameras, especially when it's phones, and that's really affects the image.
Yeah, it will. And what you can do for that is if you guys, you know, glasses, you know, just typical wipes are good because if you use just typical water, you're going to get that like smudge effect and it will look bad and you never want to get water or dust behind the lens. So always do that. I use, you know, those little things that if you're scared or like the FBI watching you, I have one of those in my lens. Personally, I'm a bit paranoid, but it is good because it makes sure when you're ready to show your face, you can, and you don't have to worry about slipping up. There's been so many occasions when I thought I've ended my webcam and I said, glad that's over, and they've listened. So be careful on that. One last question. How do you stop yourself from tripping over your words? My best tip for that is water. So if I'm talking and I'm getting a bit flustered, I'll just take one moment because to the interviewer, it doesn't look awkward because it's a normal thing having water. If I just stayed silent for a few seconds, that looks awkward. So just doing something like taking a gulp of water, which gives you a little bit of time to like compose yourself, get yourself ready. In terms of deciding what to say, it's about not repeating yourself. So giving a bit more information than what you've already done. A tip that I use is a point I learned in school. There's lots of different variations, which is called P. Point, example, explanation. So I might say something like, if they say, why, name a time you've been a leader. My point is, I'm a great leader. I've supported people. My example is, I once was in the Scouts and I helped on an expedition. The explanation is that skill set has allowed me to transfer into the workplace. So you're giving like a whole solid structure, and that is like a solid answer. I'm knackered. I'm sure you've got your lives to get on with. Stay in touch, get involved. Thanks very much.